Good day, everyone. Welcome to Real Conservative News. I'm your host, Nathaniel Rajkumar. Starting off locally here in Trinidad and Tobago. Despite committing to provide humanitarian assistance to the Cuban people amid their ongoing crisis, Trinidad and Tobago remains firm in its position not to support calls to end the United States blockade, which has been cited as a contributing factor to the country's hardship. Now, as I said in videos before, days ago or weeks ago, even though I understand the reason for having these blockades, this embargo, it's important to understand that when you take this type of action against the communist government, you end up causing the people themselves to suffer the most, and therefore this shouldn't continue to be a long-term measure. What I do believe should take place is that the Trump administration, because you can't wait for the Democrats will never do it. They should take the initiative now, take decisive action, and restore democracy in Cuba once and for all. But getting back to the news report, on March 21st in Bogota, Trinidad and Tobago, along with several Latin American countries, distanced itself from a community of Latin American and Caribbean states, CELAC, the declaration urging an end to the U.S. embargo on Cuba. Foreign and CARICOM Affairs Minister Sean Sobers told Guardian Media, Kakash Media yesterday, that the Prime Minister has been firm in a position on this matter. He added, "We are, in fact, all the members of the CARICOM are democratically elected leaders in our own right. And we can't say that we support free and fair democratic elections and then support a system that is not of that or didn't come from that. In other words, why must we continue to support the Cuban communist regime that has oppressed their people for decades, an entire generation?" Sobers said Trinidad and Tobago would be hypocritical if it supported calls to end an economic embargo on Cuba. Sobers also announced that Trinidad and Tobago will provide humanitarian aid to Cuba, but listen what they're doing, and this is the right thing, but will do so independently rather than as part of CARICOM's coordinated relief effort, because you know most likely what's going to take place. CARICOM is going to do just like what the UN organizations were doing, giving Gaza, the terrorist Gaza, humanitarian aid to distribute to the citizens, and Gaza, the Hamas was giving Hamas, the humanitarian aid to distribute to the citizens in Gaza. And what was happening is that the Hamas terrorists were keeping most of the humanitarian aid and then selling the humanitarian aid to the citizens. So basically, most likely, CARICOM was going to do the same thing and be giving the humanitarian aid to the Cuban communist regime instead of the people themselves. I'm just assuming, Sobers also announced that Trinidad and Tobago will provide humanitarian aid to Cuba, but will do so independently rather than as part of CARICOM's coordinated relief effort. He said that when this country was sending relief items to Jamaica in the aftermath of the destructive Hurricane Melissa, it also formed a relationship with reputable non-governmental organizations in Cuba. Sobers said TNT will therefore deal directly with those NGOs. The Cuban government directly... Now listen to this. And I want my PNM patriots, the Kakash Media. Why it is the Kakash Media doesn't highlight this? The Cuban government directly contracts with foreign governments to provide medical services and receives the bulk of the payments for Cuban doctors and nurses. Host countries often pay the Cuban government thousands of dollars monthly per doctor, while the doctors themselves receive only, listen to this number, 10% to 25% of that salary, with the remainder kept by the Cuban state. A portion of their pay is frequently deposited in Cuban bank accounts, only accessible upon their return to the country, so it's not like they get to use it while they are in the foreign country. God alone knows how they actually survive while they are abroad. Probably they have savings that they carry with them or whatsoever, I don't know. But I would like PNM Patriots and the Kakash Media to tell us, does that sound fair? That the government, the Cuban government, keeps or withholds about 90%, 75 to 90% of a person's salary. And therefore, what was taking place is that whether it's America, whether it's Jamaica, whether it's Trinidad and Tobago, we were basically funding the communist government while assisting them in persecuting, taking advantage of their own citizens who are Cuba, who are doctors and nurses, while all we care about is getting their expertise, medical services here in Trinidad and Tobago or throughout the Caribbean. You don't care that basically the Cuban government were exploiting your own citizens. You don't care about that. All you just care about is the services being provided. Eh? But I'm telling you, that's what I'm telling you. The communist lovers don't actually go and do research and see what is actually taking place in these countries. Kakash Media, do your work and let people know. This was off of, I didn't just come up with this, I got this information here off of the internet, off of Google, and it was provided from a BBC, a far left, radical communist loving BBC media network. UNC councillors staged an unprecedented walkout from a statutory meeting of the Tunapuna Piarco Regional Corporation yesterday, citing what they described as persistent disrespect directed at the party and its political leader. The incident unfolded just 25 minutes after proceedings began around 2 p.m., forcing an immediate pause as the council scrambled to re-establish a quorum. Now, the thing about it is, I am glad that the UNC has become a much stronger, bolder party, taking action that only the PNM was well known to do in the past if they don't agree with something, walking out and so forth. Having said that, I do really believe that our Prime Minister, Kamala Pasabi, says that central government needs to put measures in place, and whether it's policies, laws, or whatsoever, to hold these local government officials accountable for either inappropriate actions or the incompetence and neglect of their fellow constituents in those areas, in the respective areas. Because local government falters most of the time, even under UNC leadership. UNC governs well, really well, at central government level. But when it reaches down to local government, they're not much different to the PNM officials, whether it's the councillors and mayors and so forth. It's really ridiculous. I'm telling you, even here in Sangre Grande, we have a UNC board or whatsoever you want to call it, right? A majority in the regional corporation, and barely anything is still done. And we're talking about what is under the PNM and now UNC in government for a year, or almost a year now. And the regional corporation in Sangre Grande barely does anything for residents of this district. Something needs to be done about that. Prime Minister Kamala Pasabi-Sessa is accusing the opposition People's National Movement of attempting to remove police protection from schools. You can imagine the PNM has an issue with protecting our students and teachers. And all they use is, of course, the tribal cards. In a statement, the Prime Minister says her United National Congress government remains committed to ensuring a safe environment for students and teachers. My response: there's need for increased security in schools to ensure both students and teachers are protected from criminals inside and outside of the school compounds. I don't think it even has enough security yet. Put more police officers, especially in schools that they know are very well known for having a lot of violence and drug trafficking and gang and recruitment taking place. You can imagine that meeting after class, meeting after school, and discussing what group you belong to. You're talking about Form 1s and Form 2s and Form 3s, having those discussions in public. That's all in their mind because that's what they're growing up under. Their parents are teaching them to glorify gang culture. But getting back to the response that said, the only issue the Prime Minister needs to address is the mandating of body cameras to be used by all police officers while they're on duty. Because we all know the police officers themselves, the TTPS is extremely corrupt. And we cannot trust them either. But I rather police officers be present anywhere, even in my community, than actual gang people, gangsters. I rather the police officers. I don't trust them. I know a lot of them are involved in very criminal activities or whatsoever. But in general, I rather those lawbreakers than the others from the communities itself. I rather they be in our communities patrolling and whatsoever. So I said the only issue the Prime Minister needs to address is the mandating of body cameras to be used by all police officers while they're on duty. Zesters and badders cannot be allowed to remain in the school system. The PNM Patriots will say, so what to do with them? If they have committed serious crimes, imprisonment, or put them in some other correctional institute for youths. But you cannot leave them in the school system. The school system was not made for that, for education, not reformation.
Trinidad and Tobago weather forecast. Saturday, March 28, 2026. Generally fair, breezy, and hazy conditions. There is a low 20% chance of a few brief, isolated showers, particularly during the early morning and afternoon. Temperature. Piarco, Trinidad, high 31 degrees Celsius, low 24 degrees Celsius. Crown Point, Tobago, high 31 degrees Celsius, low 24 degrees Celsius. Note: high heat and humidity will make it feel like 34 degrees Celsius during the afternoon. Marine conditions. Seas, slight to moderate. Waves 1.5 meters to 2.0 meters in open waters, below 1.0 meters in sheltered areas. Winds NE to ESE 5 to 35 kilometers per hour. Haze and dust. Slight to moderate concentrations of Saharan dust may be present. Sensitive persons should take necessary precautions.
Regional news now. Minister of State in the Ministry of Education, Vocational Training and Digital Transformation in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Senator Laverne King, has highlighted a shortage of professionals in the field of pharmacology in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Speaking at a news conference on Wednesday, Minister King, who was part of the government's delegation on a recent visit to Taiwan, noted that the country currently relies on specialists traveling in regularly to fill the gap. She said this issue was recently raised in discussions with private sector stakeholders, particularly pharmacy operators. You need to become more self-sufficient when it pertains to that as well. Huh? Really and truly, it is a small island, but still, that's what needs to be done.
We recognize that at this time, we are currently undertaking a major project in the Ministry of Digital Transformation, and so we held lots of discussions about best practices, and we do know that Taiwan is one of the leading in the world as it relates to semiconductors, artificial intelligence, and so forth. And so we had fruitful discussions about how we could form partnerships about this. We recognize that scholarships offered to Vincentian nationals is an investment in them, and we had a very upfront and frank discussion with MOFA, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, about encouraging our students to come back home. And when we met with the Vincentians in Taiwan, it was one of the strong messages that we sent and spoke very candidly about. In fact, one of the discussions about that is discussing how could we, through our development bank, seek to get more funding to help them when they come back home to start up businesses, so as to look into getting a student return fund through our development banks.
The Ministry of Public Works has firmly rejected the statements issued by the Mayor of Georgetown, Guyana, regarding the designation of 22 roads as public roads as legally flawed, misleading, and an attempt to misinform the public. That may sound like a PNM patriot, boy. According to a press statement from the ministry, the government of Guyana has acted lawfully, responsibly, and in the public interest, and therefore will not be distracted by the assertions that distort both the law and reality. The claim that there was an absence of consultation is not only false, but is without legal foundation, the ministry went on to say. In many previous engagements with the City Council, as well as by public pronouncements, central government has appealed to the City Council to upkeep, maintain, and manage these streets diligently and in the best interest of residents and businesses. Unfortunately, these constant appeals were ignored, and therefore that's why central government, the Ufanali administration, decided to take what? Decisive action. Central government owes a duty to the public in such circumstances to do what is necessary to remedy the situation instead of leaving it being neglected. take action. Same thing like what central government in Trinidad and Tobago might have to do at some point in time. As these roads have been wholly neglected, are in disrepair, and in some cases are hazardous to public use, the Public Works Ministry went on to say. And you know, the thing about it is, the patriots that despise the Irfan Ali administration would have been blaming them instead of blaming their mayor for what was taking place. Motorists in Jamaica owe a total of 4.5 billion Jamaican dollars for outstanding traffic tickets issued over the last 8 years, authorities disclosed on Friday. A total of 1,174,961 traffic tickets that were issued between January 2018 and January this year remain outstanding. People are going and paying the tickets up to March 25th this year. Court administration confirmed. Now that is ridiculous. At the end of the day, I don't agree with the issuing of tickets for most offenses, traffic offenses, when it's minor. I believe in what I've said it for months now. Focus on speeding, reckless driving, those kind of things, DUIs. Those are the things that should be supposed to be ticketable offenses and also jailable. Put them imprisonment as well if you are a repeat offender because you're endangering the lives of citizens. When it's minor offenses, nah, man, that is ridiculous. But at the end of the day, still, if you are ticketed, whether you like it or not, you're supposed to go and pay your fine. So people are basically just holding it and probably throwing it away. And I mean, in a case like that, I don't understand how the authorities weren't actually enforcing it, going and pursuing and finding these people and locating these individuals to ensure that they pay their fine. But they're looking at it, they're raising it? No, because most likely they're going to do so. Raising the issue now, 4.5 billion Jamaican dollars is still a lot of money, yeah? It isn't billions of dollars in TT dollars, but it's still a lot of money, or US dollars, but it's still a lot of money. And remember, right about now, the Andrew Holness administration has turned the page and now is basically looking towards taxation in order to generate revenue to recover Jamaica, which is the wrong way though. You cannot tax a population into recovery and prosperity. Barbados Minister of State in the Prime Minister's office with responsibility for youth and culture, Senator Shane Archer says the energy at the BSSAC championships brought a sense of nostalgia as he pointed to the drums, chanting and overall atmosphere at the Usain Bolt Sports Complex. He said events like these provide an important avenue for young people to excel while also celebrating strong performances on the track, including record-breaking runs. Sports is something that we really need to focus on expanding here in Trinidad and Tobago, getting the youth involved in it. And that's why I continue to say we need to repair and build a whole lot more community centers throughout Trinidad and Tobago to be able to hold sporting events and stuff, activities. Positive extracurricular activities that we can get our youths involved in, because at the end of the day, you can't just study academics alone. There needs to be balance, and besides that, a lot of the times when you don't have that balance, what the youths end up doing, they get involved in negative activities, getting involved in gangs and so forth, and this is what we need to get out of our communities.
Why did you have to be here at the finals for the competition?
Well, every young person in Barbados that under 18 here right now. So, I mean, when they came here, it gave me a bit of nostalgia coming by. You hear the drums, you hear the chanting, you hear the singing, you see the dancing. So, yeah, it gave me a bit of nostalgia coming here. I mean, when it was my day, we had the National Stadium. I wish that one day that we will get back there once the National Stadium ends. And, you know, I really enjoying the vibes here today.
Are you pleased with some of the performances from the students?
Yeah, of course. I know there are a few from St. George, where the action is that wants some races. So I had to make it here, and you know, it's just good to see the young people enjoying themselves. And you know, sports is an avenue for many of our young people. So just coming to see them excel in their area. Yeah, I saw 2 records. So far, I don't know how much exactly were broken, but I saw 2 records were broken. One by a St. George person. So yeah, I'm happy for it.
You seem to have a bias.
Yeah, for St. George, and that's really action is. So obviously, what everybody to do well, but St. George people, you know, I will applaud them for sure. I went to school at Corjapari and Granley Adams Secondary School.
So you are cheering for them as well?
I am cheering for both of them as well.
The swift charging of a senior officer in the killing of an American man has sparked outrage as families of Bahamians that were killed by police demand to know why the same urgency wasn't shown for their cases of potential extrajudicial killings. We are asking the Commonwealth of the Bahamas to show the same sense and speedy action that was made with the tourists that was shot in the Bahamas when it pertains to their own local cases. We hope that the same action is now made for our loved ones, they went on to say. Family members of other victims, including D'Angelo Evans, said that they too have been waiting for years for their day in court. The families have since launched a campaign on buildupbahamas.com aimed at keeping these cases in the public eye and pushing for justice, pushing for action. International news now. Top White House aide Stephen Miller joined VP Vance to launch the White House Anti-Fraud Task Force on Friday, pledging to demolish the kind of corruption that unfairly burdens taxpayers and gives a free ride to bad actors, exploiting and taking advantage of taxpayers' dollars for their own personal use. I think that most citizens probably assume that there's some verification process that takes place for the receipt of most federal benefits, but it doesn't appear to be so. The reality is that there is not, Miller went on to say. I find the Americans should come here in Trinidad and help us root out corruption in our public service as well. Tiger Woods was arrested after being involved in a car crash in which he showed signs of impairment. DUI, in other words, police say. Mr. Woods did a breathalyzer test, but blew triple zeros. But when it came time for us to ask for a urinalysis test, he refused. And so he's been charged with DUI, with property damage and refusal to submit a lawful test, the sheriff said. The sheriff also went on to say that even though he is in jail right now, they're keeping him away from general population, which is important. It's not about having any privilege or anything like that. But because these individuals are so well known, they can be easily taken advantage of in prison, especially for minor offenses like this. If he had committed murder or something like that, well, fine. But these are minor offenses. It's a serious offense, and as I said before, and I said it even here in Trinidad and Tobago, that if it is repeated, you should face time in prison for even driving under the influence of alcohol or any other type of drug and stuff like that, because you're endangering other people's lives. But at the end of the day, still, you know, you shouldn't put them in general population when it's a case like that. Let them stand the consequences for their actions without having to be around really dangerous criminals. Now for the interesting facts segment. Ali Reza Dogan, owner of Alibaba Mediterranean and Turkish cuisine, showed remarkable kindness during freezing temperatures by opening his doors to those in need. He invited people struggling in the cold to come inside and sleep, not just eat to eat, sleep safely in the restaurant's entrance. Having once faced homelessness himself, he understands the hardship and now regularly provides warmth and food to others. In a country where winter can be life-threatening for the vulnerable, his actions reflect compassion, humanity, and the power of giving back. The sad thing about it is a lot of these individuals aren't even Christians, and they show more compassion, more brotherly love than those of us that's supposed to be our brother's keeper. God is going to hold us accountable, a lot of us, even within the church as Christians, for our inaction. Not just actions, but inaction.
Welcome to Real Conservative News Travel Adventures. Big Sur is a breathtaking, 90-mile stretch of rugged California coastline along Highway 1, where the Santa Lucia Mountains drop dramatically into the Pacific Ocean. It offers unforgettable scenic drives, redwood forests, and dramatic coastal views featuring iconic spots like Bixby Bridge, Pfeiffer Beach, and McQuay Falls. Key highlights and activities. Iconic drives and views. Highway 1 is the main route, offering stunning, winding views. Key stops include the historic Bixby Creek Bridge and numerous coastal overlooks. State parks and nature. Pfeiffer Big Sur State Park offers redwood hiking, while Julia Pfeiffer Burns State Park is home to the stunning McQuay Falls, a waterfall dropping onto the beach. Beaches. Pfeiffer Beach is famous for its purple sand and keyhole rock, while Point Lobos State Natural Reserve is renowned for sea otters and hiking. Activities. Popular activities include hiking, photography, whale watching, and visiting the Henry Miller Memorial Library. Travel tips. Best time to visit. September to November offers the best weather, though April to October is generally warm. Driving conditions. The road is winding and narrow. Check California Department of Transportation (Caltrans) for road closures, as landslides can occur. Pack layers, hiking gear, and fuel up before entering the area, as services are limited. Hope you enjoyed today's video, and we'll see you again tomorrow as our journey around the world continues.
Folks, that brings us to the end of today's news report. Thanks again to everyone who continues to support my content. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Stay blessed and stay safe most of all. In Jesus' name,